We're praying for the president and the first lady that they'll have a speedy recovery. I'm sorry, I'm trying to speak up a little bit. That they'll have a speedy recovery. I spoke with the vice president's office this morning as well. We're taking this obviously very seriously, and we'll do everything we can to keep everyone safe, including you all.
That is reaction coming in this morning from U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo after word overnight that President Trump and his wife Melania have contracted COVID-19. Now, this bombshell diagnosis from the White House likely to have major repercussions on many things, including the election campaign. Let's bring in our Washington bureau chief, Jackson Prosko, with the latest. Jackson, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, many layers to this developing story. The dust is just beginning to settle. That's going to take some time. We want to begin with the status of the president's health, what we know so far, and I guess the protocols put in place by the White House.
Good morning, Anthony. You know, there's a lot we don't know at this point. We don't know, for example, if the president or first lady are exhibiting any symptoms. All we know is that they have tested positive. And we should point out that the president is tested very, very regularly. In fact, that's been part of his strategy throughout all of this. He has in some ways shunned precautions around him by saying, look, I'm tested more than anybody else on the planet. He's kept in this little bubble, and he has felt that has been enough to keep him safe. So the specifics of his health, we don't know right now. We don't know, as I said, if he's showing any symptoms. The White House says that he will isolate or quarantine for an undisclosed or undefined amount of time. Essentially, though, what this means is that all of his public events have been canceled for the foreseeable future. That includes several campaign rallies, some in COVID hotspots this weekend. So, Anthony, really waiting for more information from the White House as of this morning. The president, though, did tweet out his diagnosis overnight, and the White House physician also put out a letter confirming that diagnosis.
And we also don't know how wide this net is, because obviously he's in contact with many people, has been over recent days, including many high-profile people. And, you know, as I understand, he was just in a fundraising event in New Jersey. So how many people could be infected as a result? We have no idea, do we?
We don't. And in fact, it was at that event earlier Thursday evening in which the president was actually saying that the end of the pandemic is in sight. The sort of questions about Trump's own health really arose after one of his closest aides, Hope Hicks, announced her positive diagnosis. That was revealed late yesterday. And she apparently was showing symptoms. She had been traveling on Air Force One with the president in recent days, both to the presidential debate and to an event on Wednesday. She'd also been on Marine One, the helicopter, a much more confined space and in close proximity with the president. And there are photos of her getting on and off of both aircraft without a mask at that time. And of course, Anthony, this is going to raise questions about when the president actually was symptomatic and potentially contagious. Was that during the debate on Tuesday? Is Joe Biden now potentially positive? The former vice president and current presidential candidate has said he will be getting tested today because, of course, the two men were standing on a stage while socially distanced. They never shook hands or anything like that, but they were yelling at each other for 90 minutes. And we know that loud talking is one way this virus spreads. So many, many questions. There's a full court press underway to contact trace at the White House, we're told. And Anthony, one thing I should point out is that the president was in a very close group of advisors on the weekend doing debate prep. And former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who was in that group, has said in an interview this morning that they weren't wearing masks.
It's fascinating on so many levels. I mean, this is the country. Obviously, there's the running of the country, the major issue. But then there's the side issue, the election campaign. What impacts, the implications of this? Outline some of those for us.
They're huge. As I said, we don't know how long the president will be off the campaign trail for, but there's 32 days left until Election Day. And if he were to undertake a traditional 14-day quarantine, there goes half of the remaining campaigning time in a campaign in which the president's lead continues to slip further and further away. He's well behind Joe Biden. He needs this time out on the campaign trail. It is very likely that upcoming presidential and vice presidential debates may have to be scrapped at this point. They were already in doubt over the chaotic scene that we saw at the first debate. President Trump, as I mentioned, has already had to cancel his campaign rallies. And again, there's the unknown question of Joe Biden's status and health status in all of this. In fact, the Biden campaign just yesterday announced that they were preparing to resume in-person door knocking by campaign volunteers, feeling that perhaps they could do it in a safe and respectful manner since the Trump campaign has been doing it all along. So plenty of implications here. One thing we should not also ignore in all of this, Anthony, is the potential potential for disinformation to now spread throughout the campaign. And that's going to be a real factor that has to be watched very, very closely, with one of the two major candidates having this positive diagnosis.
Interesting. Yeah, of course. And, one of the main things is, and it's fair to say that the president has taken a pretty cavalier approach to the pandemic. His stance on masks, rallies packed with people. As we look forward to today, because it's still in the early hours, what kind of damage control is the White House going to have to do?
You know, the reports suggest they're weighing all sorts of options here. And you're right, the president's contradictory messages on all this have not helped. On Tuesday during the debate, he actually mocked Joe Biden for Joe Biden's regular use of masks. Trump's own family members sat in the audience and refused to wear masks, despite that being a requirement for attendance at the debate. And now here we are. And again, we don't know how far and wide this goes. Trump has been meeting with senior members of the administration all week long. Judge Amy Coney Barrett, his Supreme Court nominee, is someone he's been in regular contact with, members of the Republican Senate leadership. All these people now have to be traced and tested. The White House has reportedly been contemplating whether or not the president needs to make some sort of address to the nation, because the markets in pre-market trading this morning have been in free fall. There are many, many implications here. Not the least of which is the continuity of government in this country. Now, there's nothing to suggest that the president is by any means incapacitated at the moment. He is simply quarantined. But again, this is a White House that has a reputation for not exactly telling the truth or being forthright. And so there's going to be a lot of questions about any information coming out from this White House about the president.
Well, you're going to have a very busy day. We appreciate your time for us. Jackson, thank you so much again. Jackson Prosco joining us from Washington.